Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Perigord, chapters 4 to 6, by Mark Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 4. The interior of the library was the polar opposite of the exterior. Its outer shell was akin to an iceberg, with the vast majority of the structure located below the surface. In the lobby, Jason found a large staircase leading down. Standing guard at the top was a statue of a beautiful Greek goddess holding a bow and arrow at the ready. Jason read the name Artemis on the statue's base. Now, standing at the top, he could see a giant maze of timber bookshelves below. As he made his way down the stairs, colorful ambient light flowed in from the stained glass windows located above. From what he could guess, there didn't appear to be many patrons within the library, but it was hard to tell with the sheer size of its labyrinthine layout. At the bottom of the staircase sat two giant stone gargoyles, vaguely cat-like in appearance, but covered in reptilian scales. They had no ears and possessed massive club-like tails, their eyes closed, as if asleep. Running his hand over the head of one of the gargoyles, Jason could feel the smooth ripple of the scales and was amazed at the intricate detail. He wondered how long it would have taken the artist to accomplish such a piece. Everything he could see had been painstakingly built or created, from the shelves and furniture to the paintings and sculptures decorating the walls and tables. How could any of this exist in a small rural town when it rivaled anything that could be found in New York, London, or Paris? Jason was so deep in thought he didn't hear the voice behind him at first. "Excuse me," the voice asked, followed by a gruff clearing of a throat. Jason turned around to see a giant of a man standing before him, easily 6'5" and around 250 pounds. He started to think of an old ballad about a drifter who saved a bunch of miners and died at the end. The individual before him definitely fitted the description. "Shouldn't you be in school?" he growled. Jason was still taking in the giant's appearance. It wasn't just the man's size, but also the way he was dressed. Physically, he looked like someone who would be more at home storming a beach with a platoon of men or busting up fights in a biker bar. Instead, here he stood, wearing a three-piece suit and a bow tie, and reading glasses perched on his nose. A name tag declared him to be the head librarian, bearing the name U. Walker. Walker ran a hand through his hair. "Look, kid, shouldn't you be in school?" he asked impatiently. Jason regained his composure. "I'm sorry, sir," he stammered. Walker raised an eyebrow and regarded the young man before him. "I just moved to town and wanted to check out the library." "Okay, slick, you've got my attention," he said, crossing his massive arms over his chest. "What exactly are you looking for? I was told there were books on Heinrich Perigord here." Walker's jaw clenched again. The man was clearly surprised by Jason's questions. "What for?" Walker asked bluntly. "Our realtor was telling me about him, and I was curious." "And?" Walker inquired. Jason's cheeks had begun to redden under Walker's cross-examination, and he too was getting irritated. "I don't mean to appear rude or anything, but isn't this a library? Aren't you supposed to help me find books?" Jason demanded. From the look in Walker's eyes, he was clearly enjoying the reaction from Jason, his smile growing wider. "Relax, sport. I just want to know so I could help you with specifics." Jason seemed to deflate, not wanting to argue further. "I just wanted some books. Can you help or not?" He sighed. "Follow me," Walker said, striding off without waiting for a response. Jason followed, remaining a couple of steps behind the big man. Walker paced robotically through the maze of books. Jason noted that he never looked where he was going. It was as though he had some built-in radar directing him, which was good, as there was no signage on shelves or coding on books. After several minutes of walking, Jason came to two conclusions. 1, the librarian had no idea what he was doing, and 2, they were both lost. "Hey, we might have to send up a flare or something," Jason joked nervously. Walker ignored the comment, and after another minute of walking, he stopped by a shelf, squatted down and looked intently at the books. Walker ran a finger along the spines before retrieving a thick tome. He did this 5 more times, after which he stood and faced Jason with a stare that could eat through steel. Despite the fact that Heinrich founded this town and was a central figure in its history, the man was a complete dick, Walker said bluntly. Jason raised an eyebrow. Keep an open mind and don't always believe everything you read on this subject, Walker added. Jason nodded, but it was clear he was only humoring the librarian. These books are fairly good accounts of Perigord, his early years, ideals, and some limited information on his church. If you need anything else, come back and see me, Walker said helpfully as he handed the pile of books to Jason, who accepted them with a nod and a forced smile. Thanks, he replied. Jason had a quick look around, realizing that he didn't know his way out. Mr. Walker? Jason inquired. Walker pointed to the end of the shelf. Just down there and turn left, he responded. Jason looked to where Walker pointed, total confusion plastered on his face. That can't be, Jason said puzzled, looking back at Walker, only to find him gone. Jason did a double take. Where did he go? Jason exclaimed, then sighed. With the books tucked under his arm, he rounded the corner and found himself facing the reception desk opposite the staircase leading back out. Jason was dumbstruck. This isn't the way we... Jason's voice trailed off as he turned back the way he had just come, only to find himself in a different aisle altogether. I could have sworn this was the way I just came, he whispered to himself. Slowly backing out, he once again found himself facing the reception desk, and after a moment of pure bewilderment, he shook his head and walked over to the counter. Reception was unattended, and as Jason was about to ring the service bell, a figure appeared from behind the counter. The library assistant was a short, stocky woman aged somewhere between 50 and 100 years, black tribal tattoos adorning her face. Despite her age, nothing about her appeared soft or feeble, her dark weathered face and hands looking as if they were carved from wood, her dark gray hair thick and arranged in cornrows. Her name tag read, Ms. A. Jax. She eyed Jason suspiciously. How can I help you? She crowed in a voice barely human. Can I check these books out, please? Jason asked. The old woman stretched her mouth wide in a crude caricature of a smile, exposing a mouth full of square teeth that look more like the grill of an old car. Of course you can, she replied, her voice like the grinding of a truck's gears. That's why I'm here. After all. Chapter 5. Jason arrived home late in the afternoon. Walking through the front door, he headed straight for the kitchen. Hey, Mom, I'm home, Jason called out. I'm here, Helen called back. Jason entered to find that his mother had been busy since his departure. All the boxes had been cleared away, now revealing a beautiful gourmet kitchen, timber, and polished granite. Helen was preparing dinner, her knife a blur as she sliced vegetables on an antique cutting board. How was your excursion? She inquired. Great. This town is crazy beautiful, if not a little strange, he replied. Strange? Helen questioned as she placed the vegetables into the steamer. Yeah, Twin Peaks strange, Jason answered as he pulled up a stool. Don't get me wrong, the people have been friendly enough. It's the surroundings. They remind me of a Tim Burton film. The park and library need to be seen to be believed. Helen had now stopped what she was doing and was watching her son with concern. This isn't a bad thing, is it? She asked. No, of course not, Jason added quickly. Besides, I'm not exactly Mr. Normal. Maybe I've found a place where I fit in, he joked. Helen visibly relaxed. Tell me more about the library. Did you find the books you were after? The library resembles a Mayan temple, most of it built underground, and inside the shelves are arranged like a labyrinth. They have some of the most amazing art you've ever seen, Jason said excitedly. Helen watched her son become more animated as he described his afternoon. And the librarian is this massive pro-wrestler-looking dude who dresses like a geek in a bow tie and reading glasses. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a hitman for the mob who's under witness protection or something, Jason chuckled. He was helpful, though, and I did get some books on Perigord. You'd be surprised at the selections there. I'll have to check out the romance section, Helen beamed. The last thing Jason wanted to do was talk about romance with his mother. "How far away is dinner?" he asked. "About half an hour," Helen replied. "Good. I'll go and clean up." Jason pushed the empty plate away with a fulfilled sigh. "I'm completely stuffed." "Me too. That fish was divine," Helen replied. "Apparently, it's caught locally. Fiona stopped by after you left. She had some forms she wanted to leave with me." Jason sat up in his chair. "Is it official?" he queried. Helen watched her son, apprehension evident on her face. "I know I've been tight-lipped about the move and the reasons behind it all, but I've had mixed feelings about inheriting this estate from my uncle and the events behind his death. It's been hard." Helen took a sip of wine. "You won't hear me complain," Jason replied. Helen was quick to change the subject. "Yes, well, when Fiona stopped by, we had a coffee and she filled me in on what Perigord has to offer. For example, did you know that almost all fresh food is produced locally?" "No, I did not know that," Jason said, feigning a shocked look of surprise. "And that honey, dairy, and other produce have won awards in both district and state fairs," she added. "You don't say," Jason said mockingly. "And that Perigord is a multiple winner of the tidiest town, and has record numbers of school literacy programs," Helen continued. "She does realize that it's a done deal, and that we're staying here," Jason said with a chuckle. "I think it's admirable that she has so much passion for this town." "Yeah, you definitely can't fault the woman there." "So it's official then. We're Perigordians." "That's right, sweetheart. This calls for a toast." Helen raced over to the fridge and retrieved a large bottle, undoing the cork as she walked back to the table. "All right, the good stuff." "You wish. This is sparkling apple juice. It was part of the welcome basket that Fiona left." "Here's to Perigord. I hope we can give something back to the community that has welcomed us in," Helen toasted. "Here, here," Jason replied. Chapter 6. Jason sat on his bed, reading one of the library books by lamplight. He was absorbed in a chapter detailing how Heinrich Perigord had moved to the valley to avoid the religious persecution he had found in the big cities. His congregation was made up mostly of young women, many of whom were his wives. "Lucky bastard," he whispered. Once Perigord had established his presence in the valley, he dedicated his life to 3 things. First, the building of his church, which later became the Perigord Library. Second, mining. And third, the planting of the black sequoia trees that were now found in the valley. The black sequoia was reported to possess magical healing properties. Heinrich and his congregation were said to have used the sap from the tree in their religious ceremonies, but it was unclear exactly how or why. The last thing in the book Jason saw was a picture detailing the church's holy symbol. A naked man and woman intertwined and forming the trunk of a tree, the branches reaching out and down and rejoining into the root system, much like the Celtic tree of life. Everything about the image was black, apart from the leaves, which were silver. The couple bore an expression of agony, as if they were being absorbed into the tree. The symbolism was both beautiful and grotesque. Jason noticed the next book was on the secrets of the SS and its inner circle. He frowned. There must have been some mix-up, as he didn't remember that particular book being included on his loan card. Confused, he put the book back and turned the light off. He lay awake for a short while thinking about Heinrich and wondering what drove him and his obsession with the church and trees. The following morning, he regaled his mother with the story of Perigord, who was impressed with his interest in research, but less so with the bizarre story of the man himself. "What a kook," Helen said. "Yeah, I agree, but even so, it's impressive in what he accomplished. They say it's a fine line between genius and insanity. Especially when we're talking about having all those wives," Jason said, smirking. "Charming." Helen shook her head. "What's on our agenda for the day?" Jason asked, changing the subject. "Well, I'm going to need to spend some time at the surgery over the weekend getting it ready for Monday's opening. I was kind of hoping that you could do a little unpacking for us here," Helen said hopefully. "Of course. In fact, leave the cooking to me tonight, too." "You're the best. I don't expect you to finish it. I realize you have school as well on Monday, so take it easy." "No probs," Jason said. "I'm actually looking forward to going through the house and checking out its nooks and crannies." Starting in Plato's study, the first thing he noticed was a small brass plaque, 3 inches square, inserted into the frame of the doorway. Engraved on the plaque was an image of a wolf's head in profile, entangled within the tendrils of a thorn bush. He ran his fingers over the image, feeling the delicate indentations of the picture. He decided it was either the signature of the craftsman's work, or just another interesting talking piece from the original owner. Either way, he realized that he had better start working. He entered the study. The large room was completely round, 19 feet in diameter, and apart from the archway, the walls were lined with built-in bookshelves, constructed of dark walnut timber reaching from the floor to the ceiling, over 3.5 meters in height. Gaining access to the shelves via a timber ladder with fixed brass wheels attached to either end and mounted to a rail, system allowing it to roll along the front of the shelves. Jason stood atop the ladder with a handful of books, carefully placing them onto the shelves. Despite the vast number of books his mother owned and the books from his late uncle, there was still plenty of space available. After a couple of hours of climbing the ladder, he decided to take a break. Plato had amassed an impressive array of books, everything from carpentry to origami. What really grabbed Jason's attention was an area that contained a collection of books dedicated to the strange and the supernatural. All were leather-bound and extremely old. One of the books in particular stood out. It was larger than the others, bound in black, soft leather with runes and symbols printed on the spine and cover. Removing the book from the shelf, Jason read the front cover. Transmorphigation. "Is that even a word?" he whispered. He carefully opened the old book, turning the pages gently. There were sketches of strange-looking creatures and symbols. The pages were all beautifully handwritten, but the text was in another language. After scanning one of the passages, Jason recognized a word, Achtung. He remembered the word from the old commando comics he used to read. It was German for attention. Flipping back to the front page of the book, Jason saw that there appeared to be an inscription made out to someone, followed by a simple squiggle, the number 8, but drawn on its side. He closed the book and walked over to the table in the center of the room. As he put the book down, something shiny fell out. Bent over to retrieve it, he discovered it was an iron cross, 2 inches long and 1.5 inches wide. The ends of the cross were bulbous, like those of a bolt. At the top of the cross, a wolf's head facing out and biting down on a leather lanyard. Jason turned the cross over. There were small runes etched into the metal, much like the ones in the book. He now thought the object looked more like a Viking war hammer than a cross. Jason smiled as he placed the leather thong over his neck. Not bad, he thought, tucking the cross under his collar as he continued with the unpacking. Helen returned home late in the afternoon to find Jason preparing dinner. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, falling into the seat opposite. "How did it go today?" "Really good. The previous fellow had good bookkeeping skills, and I was able to familiarize myself with his system easily enough." "That's great. Did you want a glass of wine?" Helen nodded thankfully. He plucked a glass from the overhead cabinet, and opening a bottle of red from under the counter, he placed the half-full glass in front of his mum. "Thank you," Helen said, taking a sip, followed by a sigh. "So, how was your day?" "Fairly uneventful. I finished unpacking the family room and study. Uncle Plato had quite a collection of books. I remember when I was a little girl staying here on holidays. He would spend hours reading in the study. His tastes were eclectic and unusual. In fact, I remember there were certain shelves that were off limits to me. So mysterious," she recalled fondly. "Yeah, I had a good look at some of them, in particular his books on the supernatural. I found this in one of them," Jason said as he pulled the iron cross out from his collar and displayed it to his mother. Helen examined the cross closely. "That's a hell of a bookmark," she exclaimed. She then gave Jason an appraising eye. "It suits you? Makes you look cool?" Do kids still say that? She asked honestly. Jason grinned and shook his head. Thank you, and yes, we still use the word cool, he said in an exasperated voice, then gave her a condescending thumbs up. Helen smiled back, oblivious to his sarcasm. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Perigord has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.